So, hello everyone. Welcome to this meditation session. And I'd like to start with an introduction, but the introduction will be a bit of a rhetorical device. So I say that to you because maybe rhetorical devices should have a warning in front of them. This way of talking may be hazardous for your habits. And or maybe hazardous if you overdo them. That important part of meditation is to enjoy it, to find pleasure. And for this meditation, I would like to give you some guidance, some instruction, if you would like to take it, on actually enjoying your meditation, finding pleasure. And one of the places in the beginning to find pleasure is to find whatever pleasure there might be in relaxing. And if so, and part of the reason to use pleasure is in fact to break our habits. Some of us have habits of kind of a negativity bias, a habit towards thinking about what's terrible, what doesn't work, a habit to orient ourselves around the problems of life and the problems we have now and how we're not doing well and how it's difficult. It's certainly reasonable to have those thoughts occasionally, and if you never have those thoughts, maybe that's not healthy either. But for today, let's try to break those habits by focusing on what's pleasant and the pleasure. But don't chase pleasure. Don't have a high standard for what it means. Even the absence of something uncomfortable you had in the past can be kind of a pleasure. And so maybe that's good enough. So taking a pleasant posture. Not the most pleasant posture you can take, but the pleasant posture for meditation. The most pleasant posture you can find, that also where the body itself expresses being alert, aware. And then to close your eyes, or let your eyes, if you don't want to close them, let your eyes be relaxed and looking down. And then looking for how to make it pleasant, that you really enjoy doing this, doing it in your way. Take a few deeper breaths, maybe slowly. And the exhale slow enough to enjoy it. And to the extent it feels nice. And as you take deeper breaths, adjusting it, maybe so it remains enjoyable, And as you exhale, relax your body. And look for where the relaxing is pleasant, enjoyable, even to the most minor degree. And then letting your breath return to normal. And even thinking of a normal breathing as occurring within a range. And as we breathe in, if you can look for how to breathe a normal inhale that you enjoy, that has some pleasure to it. Maybe only a small piece of the journey of inhaling, the beginning, the end, the middle. And also seeing, is there anywhere in the exhale that you can enjoy? There's pleasure. Maybe it's the very, very beginning of the exhale. Or there's a smooth feeling in the middle of just, or maybe at the end. Maybe some of the pleasure of breathing, very, very subtle, is that just before you breathe in, it's slightly uncomfortable. There's a desire to breathe in, and it feels good to begin breathing in. And the same as you breathe out. The very beginning might feel that you, like, oh, it's good to begin. And as you breathe in and breathe out, is there any pleasure more widely in your body that is kind of the atmosphere or the weather around your breathing? And how you are in the weather of your body. Are there ways you can relax the body more as you exhale? Maybe enjoying the effect of relaxing. part of the function of feeling pleasure, enjoyment while you meditate is so that you can be more in the present moment where enjoyment occurs. The embodied pleasure or enjoyment of here and now. And then to enjoy relaxing the thinking mind. Maybe on the exhale, softening, quieting the mind. And maybe there's found some enjoyment or pleasure in the mind if you're aware of the spaciousness around your thoughts, the softness beyond the edges of your concerns, and as you're being aware, especially aware of your breathing, maybe it can be more pleasant to shift where you're aware from. If you're aware from kind of the front of your brain, be aware of breathing from the back. Or be aware from within breathing itself. And letting the thinking mind become quieter for the purpose of better sensing, taking in, registering whatever is pleasant here and now in your body, with your breathing. In the quieting of the mind. And allow yourself to feel whatever pleasure is here. If your body's beginning to ache, hurt, you might shift your posture. Trust, assume it's okay to take in whatever degree of pleasure there is here. A pleasure which supports you being present in a quiet way. ever so gently, slightly turn up the corners of your mouth to a small half smile. And if there's any pleasure from doing that, include that pleasure as part of mindfulness of breathing. And then coming to the end of the sitting, feeling or imagining what it's like to be with yourself when the body has a degree of ease, enjoyment within it, and then imagine how you would walk around your home, informed by that ease or that enjoyment. How would you do ordinary household chores if you had all the time in the world and you did them informed by the ease, the pleasure, staying close to it, not in a hurry to get the job over, but as a vehicle for continuing to feel the pleasure. And if you're sitting in a comfortable chair, feeling this pleasure and enjoyment, then you're talking with a friend. And if you talked, resting in this ease or this pleasure, how would you talk? There's a Native American expression, to walk in beauty. How would you live in beauty? How does it support you to live in beauty? To have this reference point of a sense of pleasure, enjoyment in your body. And how might you care for the welfare and happiness of others if you cared in beauty? If you cared informed by your sense of inner physical ease and pleasure. how might your heart wish well for others? May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings be peaceful. And may all beings everywhere be free. Thank you. So good morning, good day, and so we're looking at the strategies for how we live our lives, the strategies for how to be with challenges. And there are healthy strategies and not so healthy strategies. And I'm using the example of the 5 hindrances for the not so healthy, and the opposite of those hindrances for healthy strategies. And part of the significance of taking this point of view of strategies is that if we take the time to stop and ask ourselves a question, what is my strategy here? What is my approach? How am I trying to get what I want? How am I trying to take care of myself here? Just that pause in asking that question will maybe get you to see more clearly what you're doing habitually or unconsciously or unreflectively. And many times when there are challenges, and if we're a little bit stressed in it or very stressed, that sometimes we're responding from kind of a gut reaction, instinctual reaction, or neurotic reaction that we might have. And we're so involved in that reaction, we don't even know it. It's very easy to lose ourselves, lose our wisdom, our clarity, our kind of really be tracking what's going on. And then we say things we later regret, or we run around in circles. So just simply pausing and asking this question is very significant. And then we can, answering that question for ourselves, we can say, well, maybe that's not the best way. And let's see if there's a better way. So the hindrance of today is usually translated, or one way to translate is restlessness and remorse. And restlessness is a kind of agitation that can be very compelling, and they can come with a lot of anxiety. It can come with a lot of force and power to keep us in its grip. And it's often arises out of something we're thinking about. And the way that maybe we're having thoughts which are predicting danger, or thoughts something that are challenging, and then how we relate to those thoughts is where part of the power of restlessness arises, and remorse too. And that we kind of squeeze the thoughts, we kind of get close in, they become claustrophobic around them, and that squeezing them, keeps them going. It kind of like just keeps flowing and flowing. And remorse is the same way. Remorse is in Latin means to chew again, and this rumination, this chewing again, over and over again, of what we've done, what we regret, what we feel bad about. And again, the thinking has gotten close and constricted or tight, or in a way that feels uncomfortable. And that discomfort in how we think about these around our thoughts is part of the fuel that generates more restlessness and more remorse. And when we do things when we're restless or filled with remorse, we tend not to do them in beauty. It's not a source of working from pleasure. It's very uncomfortable. And restlessness is not really a good strategy for dealing with with challenges. It's almost like avoiding it. It's like running around in circles and being trapped and not knowing what to do, and just kind of spinning out. And it's almost like the absence of a response. Um, and or if we do respond, it's just kind of confused or impulsive or not really attentive to what's happening. If we get lost in remorse, we tend to shut down from a fuller picture of ourselves, where our whole definition of ourselves now defined by what we're remorseful about. And there's a narrowing, and we don't have access again to pleasure or a sense of the beauty of what to do that's beautiful. So the other way of responding that's healthy is to be. Oh, so I want to say it this way. So when there's restlessness and when there's remorse, there's a kind of energy or a way that we're animated, that where the energy for the activity is in the body, that is off, that doesn't feel pleasant, doesn't feel enjoyable. It's maybe tight or hard or constricted or has pressure behind it, maybe pressure in certain parts of the body. There's a whole other way of being animated. There's a whole other way of where the energy comes from. So the energy is not agitated, restless, not constricted and tight like in remorse. And that is a kind of energy that we're not caught by the thoughts. We're not squeezing them or caught up. We kind of let go of the squeezing, the preoccupation, that attachment to thoughts. And the animation comes from some place inside that feels wholesome, that feels like home within us. Some place inside that has a kind of pleasantness to it, a kind of pleasure, a kind of beauty to it, a kind of ease. And the restlessness and remorse is often, we're very much often in the head, in the thoughts and the ideas. Sometimes restlessness can be purely physical, but then maybe it's not the hindrance of restlessness. It might be more just kind of overactivated something. But there is this other place, source, for something very profound about ourselves. There's another source for how we're animated. It's my way of saying where our vitality comes from, where our active. So rather than being activated by reactivity, we are supported by a flow of vitality. We're supported by an upwelling of something that feels good, even if we're taking care of something which is very challenging, huge challenges, maybe painful, and it doesn't give us a sense of pleasure. The source of the energy, the animation where we're coming from, it comes from a place of home, it comes from a place of beauty, it comes from a place of, maybe we will call it pleasant or enjoyable. And we don't sacrifice that to take care of things that are so terrible in the world, that are horrible in the world. We don't, because things are terrible, if we pause to see where we're coming from inside, we say, well, maybe I can shift from the agitated, squeezing, tightening, tense place of restlessness and remorse and come from a place of flow, a place of upwelling, a place of maybe inspiration. And instead of remorse, get caught in remorse, when we've done something that we regret or feel bad about, the Buddhist approach is to learn from that, and then instead of remorse, to remorse is to re-engage, to go forward, dedicated to doing better. And if we identify with something, we identify with the one who is trying to do better, not the one who did something that was not good. And so what are the functions of meditation? is not just to make us calm, but to make us more and more familiar with a place inside that sometimes can feel like there's a lot of joy. Sometimes it can feel very peaceful and at home. Sometimes it can feel like there's beauty there inside. Something that feels really right, a homeness, from which can flow out animating energy. We're not passive from that place, but the source of motivation from that place is very different than the sort of source of motivation when we're squeezed, when we're tense, when we're tight, when we're restless and filled with remorse. So as we learn to meditate, the idea is to begin appreciating this alternative source of how we can be animated. And we learn not to sacrifice it for the strong messages we get from our anxiety, our restlessness, our remorse, our regrets, the strong messages we get from the pain that comes from the second, third, and fourth arrows we shoot at ourselves. That just makes things even more difficult to get trapped in. Some restlessness arises because we feel trapped by all these arrows we're shooting. And so to take time to pause, to ask ourselves, what's the strategy here? Where's my source of activation, source of energy, vitality coming from? Am I activated? That word in English usually means reactivated. It's kind of like activated in a not healthy way, triggered. Or am I inspired? Is it flowing for me? Am I responding from some depth inside? So to pause, to ask that question. And if we've been meditating for a while and doing this kind of foundation, all the foundations that I'm talking about in these weeks about how to work with challenges, maybe it's reasonable to begin asking that question and to begin switching over to being that way that's beautiful, being that way that maybe is closer to the place of pleasure, enjoyment, or at-homeness that we have here. This human life of ours is very important, and it's well worth and appropriate for us to begin discovering a different place from which we're animated. It's kind of like from the different source within from which we live, the healthy place, and to be able to distinguish that from the unhealthy places that we respond and react to the world. And the world is a better place if you can come from this deeper source, come from a place of beauty and come from a place of ease and at-homeness. It's not selfish to do this. It's actually a contribution to the world. We don't contribute to the world by worrying. We don't contribute to the world by being angry and hostile. We don't contribute to the world by diminishing our value, by living under the weight of, I'm a terrible person. We contribute to the world by putting all that aside enough and seeing if we can find the very natural place within, its nature, to have this upwelling place, the upwelling source from deep inside that has a flow to it, has a joy to it, has a pleasure to it. And whatever pleasure we can feel is healing. So if you're going through a big challenge, pause, and if you have the situation allows for it, go and do something enjoyable. Don't stay in the middle of the challenge and kind of feel trapped or feel like just kind of like it's spinning out and more and more. If you've been in a challenging place psychologically, emotionally for some time, go find something to do that's pleasant. Go find someone's pet that you can pet with, or go do something that brings you a sense of pleasure. Do an activity that brings you pleasure. It may be cleaning or cooking or going for a walk. Pleasure is one of the great medicines. It can be one of the great escapes and avoidance mechanisms, and that's what, the pleasure of addiction does. But hopefully it's not that kind of pleasure you do. You find healthy pleasures that you can do when you feel over-challenged by situations. Try not to stay stuck. Try to engage your vitality, your energy, your capacity to do things, to go find the healthy pleasures. And then come back and address the challenge from a different place. So, thank you. And I hope that today you can spend some time exploring where your vitality is flowing from, how you're animated, and is it coming from a healthy place or not such an inspiring place? So, thank you.